right. And yeah, just more people are joining, so that is great. So it is the top of the hour here, and we're going to get started. Just have a, a lot of people wanting to join, so that is awesome. Awesome. All right. Get some more people in here before I introduce myself. All right. Well, thank you so much for joining today. I hope everybody is having a great afternoon. I will keep admitting people here while we go ahead and get started because I don't want to waste your time. I want to make sure we get through the presentation and I have plenty of time for questions and answers. We're getting some shout outs online from St. Louis, Missouri. Well, Chris, I'm sitting in St. Louis, Missouri as well. So hello, my friend. So that is awesome. So just to go ahead and get started here. This is the No Prep Game Mastering session, or how I learned to stop worrying and love random tables. My name is Matt. I run the website dicegeeks.com, and I publish resource books that help people cut down their prep time, have more fun at the table. It is not a huge shock that I also publish books of random tables, and that is something we're going to talk about here today as well. So my name is Matt. Like I've said a couple times for people who are just joining, I have everybody muted. So if you want to ask a question, please type it into chat. I'm going to try to get through the presentation pretty quickly. And so we can then jump into some question and answer periods and really kind of discuss this topic. And I do tend to kind of ramble when I talk about role-playing games and GMing because I love it. So just bear with me, but I will keep checking the time. So we're going to dive in and just go ahead and get started. And, you know, before we kind of really dive into material, I just want to let you know, okay, so here's kind of my story, right? So when I first started running games, the picture here kind of resembled what I did, right? I railroaded everybody into situations that I wanted, and it was kind of a mess. Well, the first time though that I ran a game, the first time I played Dungeons and Dragons, I was 9 years old. The first session I ran was the next day, and I ran my mom through a dungeon. And when I first started, I ran people on the railroad, right? I just shoved them down a path. I would tell, you know, I would prepare things, and I would basically think in my head like, oh, they will probably go right first, so I'll plan these things and then they'll go left. Well, of course, nobody ever does that, right? Like they'll go left, and I was upset, and it was foolish, right? So that's what I started doing. So that was my mistake when I first started, is that I just tried to run people down my own story without any input from them or anything like that. And I had everybody on the railroad. So I realized that that was wrong. You know, I almost lost some friends over it. So I realized that that was wrong, and I changed. So I changed my tack, and I moved to sandbox games. All right. So I was like, well, fine. You know, you don't want to be on the railroad. Well, then I'll give you a sandbox. I will give you anything. I will allow you to go anywhere, any place, interact with anything that you choose. And so that's what I did from there, right? So I started doing sandbox games. What was the problem with that, though, right? The problem with that was I was preparing things that nobody would ever see, right? Like, because I swung totally the opposite way. from the railroad, just keeping people on the railroad. I swung the total opposite way. That I went to this other extreme where I was preparing all kinds of interesting, cool things that everybody could, interact with at any time. And then nobody did. Nobody interacted with them. Nobody ever saw them. And I had notebooks of things just all around. And then of course the worst one is, reflected in the picture here, is that we have a session and it was planned and then nobody would show up. And so nobody would see my stuff even there. I think one example that I give sometimes is for a Star Wars campaign. I created 12 star systems, not 12 planets. I created 12 star systems, each with multiple planets. Many of them had gas giants with all kinds of moons, some like 70 some moons on these gas giants. I created the whole thing pretty much, right? And my players went to 2 planets, not 2 star systems. They went to 2 planets, right? So I created all of this stuff and they just never saw it. And so needless to say, at railroading people, my players were upset. Doing sandbox games, I started getting upset and I knew something had to change. But then, right, I started getting other complications, right? I have a family, I have responsibilities, all of these things. I'm not 16 anymore when I could just sit and, kind of doodle in a notebook for 20 hours, during the week. That time was gone, right? So, I moved into this time and it's just like, well, when am I going to prepare? When am I going to prepare for a session? And of course, right, then, kids and all this family responsibilities, all this stuff. When am I going to, have time to prepare, any of this stuff? And I kind of, at that point, just decided to go no prep. And I'm going to go into a little bit more details of what I mean by this. But like I said, I just could not, if I prepared material, sometimes it seems like I railroaded. If I prepared a sandbox, I was just doing lots and lots of prep that nobody, ever saw any of that. And then, time in my life just kind of filled up with other responsibilities. So my idea has been to go no prep. And of course, I wrote a little book about this and I have some ideas and we'll dive into this more right now. So my first thing about, running games, being the game master, the dungeon master, is to relax. I think so often that, the game master or we put so much pressure on ourselves that we're thinking, okay, I've got to know exactly what I'm doing. I've got to spend this time. I've got to, do all of these things to be ready for my players and my, what they're going to do and all of this. I think we just need to relax. And of course, this has also kind of been intensified nowadays when we have, celebrities or, professional game masters running games, and they're running games and they're doing like this amazing stuff. They're doing amazing jobs. They're doing incredible, campaigns. And, sure, if that's your full-time job, I would expect you to be awesome, at it. Right. But if you're, working and you're running in late and you're helping your kids and you have 5 minutes right before your session starts on your 1 week, hanging out with your friends, well then, hey, I get it. It may not be polished. All right. So that's fine. But I think we just need to relax and kind of think about our prep in some different ways, right? Instead of kind of longhand writing out some things. So here's some tips and tricks, right, that we're going to dive into and really get into some ideas. And then, like I said, hopefully here I'll be done with some of my material and I'll be able to take questions and from people in the chat. So what I'm really talking about here is like when I go no prep, right? I'm not, you know, I don't want anybody to think that I'm like anti-prep or something. Like I'm not. Like you can prep if you want, if you enjoy it. Some people really enjoy it. Some people have the time and the ability to do it. That's great. But I don't a lot of the times. And so what I'm talking about here is one of the main ideas, kind of along with the relaxing thing, is to just kind of think about what you're doing, kind of think about your session a little bit. When you're, driving, you're taking a shower, you're doing some kind of activity where you're just like on autopilot, just kind of think about your sessions, your campaign, and just have some ideas kind of running around in your mind. So we're going to look at some of these tips and tricks. So published adventures, consume media, books, TVs, movies, and random tables. And I will kind of explain this a little bit more. So published adventures. Published adventures are really awesome. And they can be great tools if you want to just to run them as they are. Some of the cons, right? Like I'm talking about prep. One of the big cons to a published adventure is, and this is going to sound really lazy, right? But like you have to read the whole thing. And I don't have time to read, a 200-page adventure most of the time, right? So, you have this problem here with a published adventure that it needs to be read, and you have to run it, in that vein. You have to think about it in that kind of context, that you're going to have to read a couple hundred pages, maybe in some cases, or at least 50 or 60 pages. Also cost, right? That's another con. You just have an extra cost on our books, and we're buying books anyway. I mean, I'm in 5th edition. I don't even want to admit how much I've spent on 5th edition books, right? So there's an extra cost if you're going to buy published adventures. Some of the pros, though, right? Of course, they're all ready to go. And and number two, right? The quality. Some of the published adventures just knock it out of the park, right? With the quality of the writing, the creativity of some of these situations and conflicts and stories that are in there. They're just fantastic, right? And they're also, a lot of times they come with maps that are awesome, and they come with, great resources that can help you run. So some of my ideas with published adventures, right, is, if you get the published adventure, you can mine it for ideas and resources without reading the whole thing or even running that adventure as it is written. You can just take out some of the, you can read like some of the synopsis of the stories or some overviews of the stories, and you can just grab those ideas and take those and work them right into your campaign or right into your session. And also maps. Maps are awesome because maps don't care what edition you're running usually, right? You can have a map that you've had for years, and you can just pull that map out and just use that map over and over and over again. And through the years, kind of back in the day when I was running tons of Star Wars, the West End, 6D system, I got the adventure, what was it? A Manhunt on Tanawin. And that came with a map of Mos Eisley. And then on the backside, there was a map of the Cantina. I still use that map when I run, if I play Fantasy Flight, right? The Star Wars game, because that map works. It's a map. It's awesome. And it works. So that map has given me 30 years of enjoyment. So I paid, like $7 or $8 for Tanawin Manhunt in 1990 or 92 or whenever it was. And that map still works with Star Wars. So the same thing goes for maps in Dungeons and Dragons as well. You can just use those maps over and over again. So some of my ideas about like going no prep, if you pick up a published adventure and you don't have time to read it, just mine it for those ideas. Just pull out some of the things, use some of the resources that it comes with, use the map, and then to get your money's worth, just use that map over and over again. Because like in a Star Wars game, I mean, who doesn't want to go to Tatooine? And you're going to go to, you're going to go to Mos Eisley a lot if you're running kind of an Edge of the Empire campaign. Well, it's an awesome map, so let's just use it over and over again. So that's how, I like to use published adventures usually, is just for resources, to pull things out. Now, this one right here, this one, consume media. This is something where, some people kind of get a little confused by this one. And, I'll spend a little time of what I'm talking about here. When we're role playing, when we're the game master, when we're playing, even when we're players, right, we're all sitting around at a story, at a table telling a story together, right? We're all telling a story together. And where can you get some really awesome stories and ideas? You can get that from books, you can get it from TV, you can get it from movies. And so what I suggest, right, is, I pretty much assume that everybody is reading books, watching TV, and watching movies, right? Because that's the way it goes nowadays. You're either doing one of these three things. And so when we're watching them, what I suggest to do is to be just a little bit more conscious of when, you're watching something on TV, you're watching a movie, or you're reading a book, just to be a little bit more conscious. See, what kind of situations or plot twists or kind of, scenarios, what is that book doing? What is that TV show talking about? What happens in that movie? What kind of kicks off the plot? What kind of drives the story forward? And kind of just a little bit more consciously, think about what's going on and what are those, what is happening as you're watching that movie or reading that book. And also, these, the movies and books, they can also help us learn about story structure, right? We can kind of get a sense, and it's not, it's not rocket science, or anything like that. It's, but it's just like, they can help us get an idea. Well, there's people, they're kind of going along their lives, something happens, they're pulled into something that gets more complicated and dangerous and kind of up to the climax. And then you have a bit of a down to the resolution, right? And so you can see how that plays out in books and movies and TV shows, and kind of understand, just kind of, not like spending hours of writing down notes or anything like that, but just kind of understand when you're running sessions, then, okay, well, maybe I should have something happen that can pull them, my players, into things that can get more complicated as they go along, and then lead them to a certain place where they have to do something big. And then when that happens, give them a resolution to that situation, right? That's story structure. And that's just, thinking about when we're watching a movie, watching, TV, reading that book, seeing, what kind of happens in, some of these books and how they do that. And when we're thinking about story at the table, are there ways that I could put that in and help push my players to, higher, place into even a more complication. And also, exposure to great stories, sparks great ideas, right? If you're reading some, great literature, you're seeing some really good movies, you should at some point just start to be able to get ideas from those, and, and kind of take little bits of those, things and, those stories, and then kind of run with it. And of course, I have the last one down here. It makes you a more well-rounded person. Well, of course. And so the more exposure to stories that we have, especially great stories, the more I think it helps you as a person. It will help us at the table. And some of the, the main kind of idea with this is just to kind of get some of these kind of working in the background, like, if you're going to run an Eberron campaign, well, maybe listen to, you know, the works of Jules Verne, right, to get some, you know, ideas that would fit into kind of a steampunky-ish world. Or, you know, maybe, you know, if you're running a steampunk game, you know, listen to some Jules Verne. And what's the downside, right? If your sessions get canceled and you can't run the campaign, well, you just read some books that are considered classic, you know, world literature. And so there is really no, you know, downside to that. It also, you know, like I said, it makes you a well-rounded person. It also makes you a better writer if you're exposed to these things and you're wanting to write or you're wanting to do something. The more great stories, the more stories that you consume, if you're thinking about them in some degree, instead of just passively, you know, letting them wash over you. If you're thinking about them in a kind of a conscious manner as you read them, they will help you do that. And also, you know, just to dig down for a minute on the practical side, like the plot twist and situations, you know, if you've just seen a recent movie, and it can be anything from a Marvel movie to whatever, if you've just seen a recent movie, you can take a situation from that movie and kind of generalize it, and you can just use that right in your campaign, right? So like, you know, or is there a situation in, you know, a book that you've just read and you're like, oh, I'm running D&D tonight, and I just read in this book that there was like, and you know, like a hidden underground lake where the people, you know, found hidden treasure around it or something. And just take that and put it in your session, right? Just take that and confront your players with it and see what they do with it. So that is just a really practical tip right there. And like I'm saying, like, you know, with this no prep idea, let some of these things, like, as you're just going about your normal thing, you're just, you know, you're working, you know, you're watching some TV show and you're going through some episodes each night. Just let the ideas, you know, think about it just a little bit more consciously, and then, you know, see how you can use some of those ideas in your campaign. A bonus trick here also, here I've thrown up a poster of a 80s post-apocalyptic movie. You can also just run the movie straight as is, or the book straight as is. This is just a bonus cheat. I usually find that I find that a lot of people who've run games for a long time have done this. I've done this. So a friend of mine, I was working on a post-apocalyptic game years ago, and in the early 90s, and he was play testing for me, and I begged him to run me a session because I had never got to play. I was always the game master in my own game. I begged him to run a session. Well, he runs a session. He had NPCs, he had a plot, he had this whole thing. It was all worked out. I was like, oh my gosh, this is great. You know, this is great. And I was like, why don't you run games more? This is fantastic. And he's like, well, I just ran you through a movie. I just took the whole thing. And I hadn't seen this movie at the time. And now I can watch it and kind of laugh because he ran me through the whole movie. And then in chat, Dave did mention ebooks, audiobooks through library apps. Can definitely cut down the cost of, you know, exploring some of this great literature. Also, I mean, just as an extra point, if you're talking about classics, if you want to read the classics, most of those are free, right? They're out of copyright, and LibriVox, people read those books and they're in the public domain. You can listen to those, and so yeah, so you can kind of push down the negatives on that, you know, of cost, and you can also listen while you're, you know, while you're commuting, or while you're cutting the grass, or while you're doing the dishes or whatever. Now, the negatives to this trick, you know, running the movie, the negative would be Star Trek 6. You know, I mentioned Star Trek 6 because I'm in a session one time, about 15 minutes in, and I realized that the game master's running Star Trek 6. Now, I am or at least I was back in the day, I was a big Star Trek fan. I have seen Star Trek 6 more than any reasonable person should have seen Star Trek 6. And so he's running us through Star Trek 6. The session was not any good for me, right? Like it was, I like the movie as well. And I've watched it a lot, but having it run like by the numbers as a campaign when I've seen the movie, like I said, more than any reasonable person should, it didn't work very well. So you got to be careful, or you need to make your situation so general that it doesn't cause that problem. Or you can just say, hey, look, guys, we're starting out. It's going to be like Star Trek 6 in this way, but we're going to have a jump off point. What do you think? And I'd probably be then, that sounds pretty good. Now that I would be for. Some people in chat are, mentioning you can watch movie trailers and get ideas. That is actually a really good idea. And yes, somebody else said usually the trailers are better than the movies. That is certainly the case, a number of times, sadly. All right, so the next thing is random tables. Like I said, surprise, surprise, right? I make a lot of books of random tables. I love random tables. If I'm coming to if I'm coming to a session and I haven't had time to prepare because I'm taking care of, kids and responsibilities and all kinds of things. When I come to a random table is an awesome tool. All right, because random tables can provide really quick creative ideas that you can just take and run with, right? And right at the table, you can just take some of these, or 5 minutes before, you can roll the dice and get a plot line or a plot hook and say, okay, that's what we're doing for this session. And usually those ideas are creative because the person who's created the table has spent time thinking and, putting some of their creativity into that table. And so usually those ideas are better than what I could come up with after I've, sitting at the table, half brain dead, trying to, or, if I run a session or worked all day or something. And then, so the table can help you get some creative ideas really quickly. And also they can let the dice tell the story. And what I mean by this is I think there's some magic in the randomness of dice rolls, right? That when, we come to a, we're working here with a game, right? We're playing a game. When do, if we're creating a character, when does a character sometimes pick up, kind of quirks or cool features that we weren't thinking about? Is when we roll on a random table or we roll a dice and like, you're like, oh man, my character is going to have a 6 intelligence or whatever. What am I going to do with that? And you say, well, at first, you can be upset, but sometimes you can lean into that and it creates an interesting character that you weren't thinking about. You let the dice tell the story, and random tables can do that same thing, right? So this can go into, killing the railroad kind of sessions, because you just rolled randomly. The dice is going to tell the story. It's going to take the story in a new place, something that I wasn't thinking about, something my players weren't thinking about. And this also goes into, like I ran games, I'm getting to play more now, but like I was the GM for a long time, right? For a long time. And to introduce my friends to role-playing games, I had to basically just be the game master, right? Because I knew how role-playing games worked. They didn't. So I was introducing a lot of people, so, to role-playing. So I was the game master for a really long time. And some of the things that I discovered was that I was getting bored because I knew where the story was going to go, right? I was getting bored because I just knew what was going to happen. I was thinking about it. I knew it was happening, or I'd written down an outline or something. But if you let the dice tell the story, right? Like, I don't know where it's going. My players don't know where it's going. I'm having fun. We're improvising a little bit more at the table, and it's just a lot fun for me anyway. Random tables can also answer questions. I'm sure a lot of you know who've run games and run games a lot. There are some sessions where like I cannot even like move, we can't move the story because my players are just asking me questions, right? Like we're just getting so many questions. It's just like, oh, is that door locked? Is the inn open? What color is that girl's hair? And you're just like, what? Like, I don't know. Like, and you start, getting into, you know, um, you start getting into this thing where you want to say something like, I don't know, stop asking me these questions. And that's not going to be fun, right? And that's not, it's not fun for me because I'm getting upset. It's not fun for my players because some reason they need to know like what color that NPC's hair is. And I don't know why, but they do. And so the random table can just solve that problem, right? I can just open up a random table, roll on it, and say, okay, yeah, here it is. Here's this NPC I got off a random table. This is what they are. This is what they look like, or you can answer even simple questions of, what's over there? What's under that rock? I don't know why people ask me what's under that rock, but they do. And so you're just like, okay, well, roll on a random table and I'll give you something under the rock. And also, right, players want to search everything, right? They just want to search everything. And I don't blame them. When I play, I search everything too. So I don't know what it is. It's something with the game, the nature of the game or something. I don't know. But we search everything, right? You just said we're in a forest. I'm going to search the base of a tree. Like, why? I don't know. I'm just going to search it. We're in a dungeon room. Okay. You get the one item that you were looking for and it moves the story along. Then the other 4 players want to search the room too, right? Because they just want to see. And, and I really got tired of saying, well, you find nothing. You don't find anything, nothing. There's nothing there. And I kind of really got, tired of saying that. So a random table with items on it that don't enrich people or give them, great treasures, like a random table of dungeon room items that has a dead rat, 2 gold pieces, a rotten piece of wood, a rusty chain link on it. You roll on that table, you give those people those things, and they are usually happy. I know I am very happy, right? Like, and players also do crazy stuff, right? They're like, a rotten piece of wood, I'm going to use that for something. And you're just like, fine, okay. I think, whatever, use it. But, but if I wouldn't have had that random table, right, I would have just said, well, there's nothing there. And the player would have been like, oh, okay, well, we got what we came for. Fine. Let's just go from room to room. I could have been playing a video game instead or something, right? Like, this is the chance to really get something into, players, just to give them a little something extra, right? That that they can play with. And a rusty chain link, I don't know, maybe they're going to do something with it. They're going to put it on their outfit. That's going to become their token, right? Who knows? Now, there can be some cons. If it can take the story in an entirely new direction. If you search in a table, if you're searching, say, a wizard's tower, and you have some random table of items and all the players search it, and one of the players gets a map, and it says it's a map to a legendary library. And then all the players kind of just start talking, and they're like, kind of this dark political game that in this urban fantasy that we were doing. I mean, that was fun and all, but man, we just got a map to a legendary library. Do you think we should just like follow this map to a legendary library? And so that can just kind of change, right? That can just kind of change your whole game right there. Now, how this helps with the whole no prep idea is that urban political kind of dark fantasy game set in the, water deep or whatever, um, that was probably just random anyway. So, hey, you want to go look for a legendary lost library? Let's go. Let's go. I don't care. I didn't have my, heart set on that either. We were just kind of going, and it was kind of fun. So, let's go and do that. Also, like, being a slave to the table, sometimes the random table can't anticipate your exact situation, right? And you'll roll something and it just doesn't work. Well, then ignore that, right? Ignore that and do something else with that, kind of go a different way, or pick another result off the table. But you can do a lot of things there to kind of get around some of those cons. Or one con is if you only have a few random tables, some items will repeat here or there. But like, to me, that is not the biggest con in the world, right? Because if it helps me get the session going and I'm having ideas during the session, well, I can just use some of those too. I can rely on a random table at certain times. I can rely on my own ideas at a certain time, and we can just kind of go with that and kind of, just kind of run with some of those things. And if a table result comes up that just doesn't work, well, you can skip it or you can use it in some other way. But I tend to like to take some of those and just try to make them work and see if it works. Because like I said, I want to be surprised. I want to be surprised where this adventure is going, where my players are going, what we're doing, what kind of story this is going to be. I want to be surprised and I want to have fun too. So those are just some ways that you can use random tables. Now, like I said, I do create books of random tables. I do, I also wrote a little book about no prep GMing, because I just think, I know it's really cool if you can spend a lot of time in prep, if that's your thing, if you enjoy it. When people aren't enjoying it, or they don't have time, or they feel like they're pressed, or they feel like, I'm already buying all the books because I'm the game master, I'm already prepping, and my players can just show up, with, I mean, it used to be at least they could bring you a bag of Doritos or something. Now, if you're playing online, they can't even bring you a bag of Doritos or something, right? It's like, well, if my players didn't have to think about this all day at work, then why do I have to, right? Why can't I just show up at the table and play and have fun, instead of like driving myself mad? So I know there's been a lively chat, and we are very sorry to hear someone passed away, that a friend passed away. So very sorry there. So we have like 22 minutes. I would love to take some questions in the chat here. Hopefully I didn't confuse anybody or lose anybody. Like I said, not anti-prep or anything like that, but I think going no prep can help us stay sane sometimes, help us with the crush of stuff that we have to deal with, and keep remembering we're playing a game to have fun. So any questions? I would love to take some questions. We can dig into some more practical things. If you have a session coming up tonight or something, you need some help, let's just see what we can think about. All right. So here's a question from Michael. I find that when I roll on random tables, my players assume that whatever is happening is because that it is random filler and don't engage with it. How do I solve that? That is a good question. I almost have the opposite problem sometimes, right? Because like if you mention anything, people assume it's important. That's like, I think that's a byproduct of like video games, right? If I describe a road and I say there's a pile of rocks near the road and then it makes a turn, well, people are like, well, I'm checking out that pile of rocks, right? Because they think then it's important. If you're rolling on a random table and people, assume that it's just filler and don't engage with it, we'll say, let's do something like this. So you have them roll on a random table. They find in a dungeon room, like you've already given them the plot stuff, you've already given them some magic items, but somebody finds a key made of bone, like a small key made of bone that was on a random table. They might think, oh, well, it's just junk, I'm not going to engage with it. Well, make that key open something. Make that key, then just that key is going to open something. Maybe it doesn't open something in this dungeon. Maybe 3 sessions from now, they're going to come across a little wooden chest in the shady sheriff's office that they're ransacking, and they're like, oh, little wooden chest, oh, I'm going to break it open. And then somebody's like, no, they'll know we've been here or something. Just have that key open that. Have the key open that little chest. This is something that I like to say. Some people talk about railroading and they'll use the term the illusion of free will. I don't like that at all. I think that's backwards. I want to give my players free will, but I do sometimes give people the illusion of prep, that I will, that they'll roll something on a random table and it'll be like, oh, that a coin, it has a foreign writing on it, it has some language on it, and you just never seen it before and you've never heard of it. Well, some sessions later, maybe they're gonna, a foreign army is going to invade, and I'm just gonna connect that to that coin or something like that. And then your players will be just like, wow, you planned that whole thing? And and if you're immature and kind of a jerk, you can just do that. Yeah, I planned the whole thing. Or you can just just be like, no, who knows, maybe it's random, maybe it's not, I don't know. Does it matter? You having fun? So try to give them the illusion of prep, make it worth something. If it's if it's just a random item like a rusty chain link, like I said before, you don't have to do anything with that. But if you get a little item, that has an interesting story, if it's the one I love is like a ring, just just like an iron ring, just say it's inscribed with some initials, right? ERB is written on the inside, and then kind of work that in later somehow. Just remember that and jot that during the session. And then right before the next session or a later session starts, just kind of figure out how to work that in. And then people realize, oh, right, this is, even the things from the random table matter. All right, let's see. Somebody says they use Reddit for a lot of map ideas. Yes, absolutely. There's a lot of map ideas. And somebody suggested about the question Michael asked, maybe don't let them see you roll. That's a possibility. Maybe you don't roll or something, or you roll right before they arrive or something and they think it's in there. But I think too, sometimes you can roll and people will, maybe it's, or maybe they know you're running no prep. I mean, my gaming group knows that I run no prep. Obviously, I wrote a book about it. I talk about it in presentations, so I can't hide it from them. And I write, I create books of random tables. So I'm sitting at the table using my own books. So they know it's random, but they also know that I'm probably going to make that mean something later on, if it's just not a piece of junk or something like that. Okay, so Derek asks, how do you handle unexpected encounters? I want to board the ship that you've never anticipated or prepped for. So you're rolling on random encounter tables can be kind of tricky. So that would kind of be my least favorite random table, would be a random encounter table, unless if it's a non-combat encounter table, those are awesome. But if it's like a combat encounter table, those can be really tricky because you can roll, well, I mean, I ran Curse of Strahd for my group because I hadn't run a published adventure in a long time. I mean, we're level 3. I think I think we might have been short a player. and I rolled on the random table in the book of Curse of Strahd, and I got 6 dire wolves, and it tore through the party, right? Like 2, 3 of them died. It killed Irina. I mean, the direwolf killed Irina. And so then they had to like rebuild the party with some new characters, have her resurrected. I think it made it better in the long run, but it was a little scary right there at the beginning, right? So random, combat can be a little crazy, but yeah, you get a random encounter. Oh, there's a ship in the harbor. I want to board the ship. Just roll with it. Just go, just kind of roll with it, kind of try to just figure it out. Improvise, take cues from your players, react to what they're doing, follow along. Have a laptop or your computer right there. If you're running online, you have your computer, type up, I need a ship map. Just type it in real quick. You probably find a ship map or something like that, and then just improvise it. And then actually just lean into random tables and fill the ship with ideas. Or like I said too, oh, you watch a movie, a couple weeks ago, and it had a really cool character in it. Well, he or she is the captain of the ship. Just like, generalize it, put it in there, and try to get better at that improvising. Kind of that improvising and reacting to your players when they do stuff. The best thing for a no prep GM is just to have players who are always like, I run into the basement. I check it out. Does it have a basement? I don't know. It does now. Okay, go in the basement. Oh, I want to board the ship. Okay, fine. You board the ship. The guards are all drunk. What do you do? Oh, you go into the cargo hold. Well, I have a cargo random table. You can search it a little bit. Oh, you hear something, some creaking sound or something, like, just like start trying to learn how to become better at improvising, because that's going to help you no matter how you're running games. And I'll try to speed up here because we're running out of time. A lot of messages. This is awesome. Somebody says they never use map. Obviously, that's another way. You can just keep your everything free form, and you don't have to worry about where you fit in people. You just keep everything free form and just kind of make it up as you go along. So that is definitely a way to do it. I just kind of love maps. So I just like looking at maps. I love maps. So I kind of use them every once in a while, even though I don't use minis or anything like that. So Amy asked, do you make random tables for each specific session or stockpile ideas? Usually I kind of stockpile stuff. Back in the day, before I started publishing my own books, like I have 17 books of random tables now that are published and are out that you can check out. Back in the day, actually it really started because I remembered the random tables from playing D&D back in the 80s when I was, a preteen. And I was running Star Wars. Well, Star Wars West End never did random tables for Star Wars. So I started making my own random tables for Star Wars. And I would make, number one, I had to make a cargo list, right? So I knew, we're freighter captains, right? We're smugglers. You have to have cargo. So that was just like right off the bat. I knew I had to have cargo. So right now, I don't really make some for specific sessions, but I will stockpile ideas. If I'm in a session and somebody's like, oh, I want to, search this blacksmith shop, I'm like, oh my gosh, what's in a blacksmith shop? Obviously like an anvil and some hammers, like that's not very creative, right? So like, I write that idea down, and of course I've created a list for what's the items that are in a blacksmith shop. So now I have that list so I can use that. Question from Debbie. Love the idea of using movies, books to create one-shots. However, what if your friends consume the same media as you do and know how all the stories end? Well, that's what I kind of said with the kind of the bonus trick. If it's something very popular, right? If it's Infinity War or Black Panther or something, well, everybody's seen those, right? So you're just going to be like, oh, well, they've seen those. Just take an idea from them then, right? Just take like a situation or an idea from them. So say like Black Panther, right? A high technology city hiding under kind of a low technology area, say, hey guys, it's going to be like Wakanda, but it's not. Are you cool with that? And probably your group's like, oh my gosh, I'd love to play in that, right? Like that's just going to be something that they would love. So just don't necessarily run them down the same plot of the movie if you know, or book if you know they've read that or it's something really popular. Kind of just take a few situations from that and generalize it and then move. But like too, I mean that works for anything. Like if you're running, you know, some of the you know, like if a friend said, hey, I'm just going to run like the Trojan War, like, you know, from the Iliad and the Odyssey, I'm just going to run that basically. What do you think? I'm like, I'm there with like 2 bags of Doritos, right? Like I, you know, I already know how it ends, but I'm going to be there, right? Because it's awesome. So sometimes it doesn't matter. So um, opportunity to explore fanfic. Sorry, I don't understand that. Filing off the serial number. So somebody, that's basically what there's some people in chat are answering questions, good ideas here. Yeah, and somebody said the twist, right? You know, have the person sitting back going, oh yeah, we're running Infinity War. I get it. Okay. And I'm gonna jump on this and I'm gonna beat the game master. And then you're like, nope, totally changed it. You know, gonna be something different. And then some people are answering some of the other questions, which is great. So you can definitely get that. I will try to get in here. First off, thanks for the presentation. Thank you. Gave me some new perfections on, oh, he's using pre-made random stuff. How creative. My question, where do you draw the line? When is the table too random? Tables I find online are mostly either really specific to a setting or really vague, but the vagueness kind of makes it require more prep. Yeah, I mean that can be an issue too, right? Like you know, when I create random tables, I try to walk that line, right? You don't want to be too specific to where you read the table and you're like, well, I have to be, you know, this table's only works if I'm in a port city because they have, you know, stuff for that. Or this table is so vague, it says, you know, it says like help a duke stage a coup, you know, and you're like, what? Like, what do we do with that? So, you know, you know, I try to walk that line in the tables I create, but when you're rolling on the tables, I think, you know, as a game master, you know, it can really, you know, it really just helps to kind of really develop that idea of, you know, how, you know, if I rolled, you know, help a duke stage a coup, how can I think in the next 2 minutes? Like, can I just excuse myself and go to the restroom or go grab a drink and just run through my mind like, okay, so it's a duke. What's a duke? There's a court. There's aristocrats. A coup. Is there a rebel group? Is there, you know, and just start thinking of those ideas as quickly as possible, and then go to the table and say, okay, you know, here this person at the inn, you know, approaches you and says, you know, or you hear in the inn, everybody hates the Duke and the Duke is vile. What do you do? The Duke is like, you know, murdering innocent peasants and stuff. What do you do? Ask your players and then react to what they say, and kind of let that kind of let that improvising kind of go there. And somebody does love Edgar Rice Burroughs. I think I said ERB. I'm on the ring for the initials. I have another GM. So this is from Dana. I have another GM friend. One of my favorite sessions, Master of Star Trek, the Tribbles episode with Gilligan's Island, and I Dream of Jeannie in D&D. It was amazing. Yeah, you can definitely do stuff like that. You can take ideas from a whole bunch of sources, mix them up in there, and really create some cool stuff. Yeah. And Eunice says, just roll randomly and then freak them out and say nothing happens. You can definitely play mind games if you want with your players. They play mind games with me, so I'm going to give it back to them. 2 questions. Scalability. Not all encounters need to be at that level. It can be low or higher, though. I find my second level players think, oh yeah, I can take on a level 25 dragon. You can try. How do you make scaling happen? Well, yeah, that's kind of what I said. I don't usually care for, you know, combat encounters on random tables too much. But occasionally I will. I usually like to, you know, think about a combat encounter maybe a little bit more, or if I'm pulling it, if I'm really going no prep and I haven't even thought about it, but I know I need to hit my players with something, I'll just use, I think there's a website, it's a Cobalt, what is it? It's something like Battle Cobalt or something. It just creates encounters for you. It just spits them out. You can just type in 4 players, level 8, and it'll give you like 3 creatures that, and you could set it to deadly. What is it? It's called Cobalt something. Maybe somebody in the chat knows what it is. I am really sorry. We only have 5 minutes left. We have 55 messages, so I'm gonna try to really roll here, get to some questions before it is over. How do you balance the no prep, random style of DMing with satisfying sense of story progression in a longer campaign where most of all the sessions contribute to an overall plot instead of just being a series of random disconnected encounters? Yes, Megan, this is from Megan. Thank you for the question. This is where I really try to lean into that idea of an illusion of prep, right? If I'm rolling random on my sessions, but like I will learn from the other sessions, right? And really kind of push into them. And, you start to see patterns emerge, and you can hop on some of those stories and some of those things that emerge from the random sessions. So maybe the first 5 sessions are really random, and then you can kind of jump on some threads that you've seen in there and kind of just pull it together. Or just another thing that I keep relying on is also, I ask my players, what do they do all the time? I ask them, what are you doing right now? I ask them a lot once I set up a situation. Once I see they jump on something, I will try to use that to pull that through to some kind of climax. I will just kind of jump on that. And usually I'll get the idea, something about, session 5, 6, 7, or 8. I'll get the idea of what I'm going to pull to a climax, so I can do a climax, by like session 12 or something like that. So I just kind of let the other sessions inform that as I go along. Second question, where can I get your stuff with the highest payout to you? Well, thank you so much, Chris, for asking that. I make the most on DriveThruRPG. If you go to DriveThruRPG, or Amazon also is pretty decent if you buy the paperback off Amazon. But if you buy the paperbacks on DriveThruRPG, that's where I make the most money. You can also you can go to dicegeeks.com, find a lot of those links there to a lot of my books. Some people, some people are saying you can nudge your rolls for plot reasons. Sure. If you don't want to kill, somebody, sometimes, something comes up, you might, kill somebody, you can tweak things. I'm totally fine with doing stuff like that. I know it's kind of controversial sometimes. I don't know why there are so many controversial things about a game sometimes, but like, if we're all having fun, it shouldn't matter, what happened. So a lot of questions here. Let me see. Going random too much, I can lose track of what happened. Yeah, I get that. It's just, write down some key things that happened. Ask your players to recap if you haven't had a time, because I'm trying to talk to real people, right? I mean, if I have 3 weeks to game, 3 hours to game one night, I don't have 3 hours any other night of the week, right? Like, this is not going to happen. So I just run in, and and now I'm turning on Roll20, and I'm like, oh, got 5 players, let's go. I haven't had a chance to look at anything for like the last 3 days because I've been flying and doing, life and everything. I just ask them, so, okay, what did we do last time? What happened? Get them to recap really quick, and then just be like, oh, that's right. I wanted to jump on this thing. This one innkeeper, I was going to give him a secret, or her a secret. And then we'll just jump on some kind of thread like that and say, okay, what are you doing? And see what kind of happens. Let me see if I can find some other questions here. I'm skipping down again. Yeah, we only have a minute left. We have 60 messages. I will apologize. Not going to be able to get to all the questions then. And let's see, stories. Yeah. And so there's also, so somebody's saying like with the stories about say like Black Panther, you don't necessarily have to run the whole Avengers thing. It's like who cleans up after the battle, what happened in Wakanda after the battle, what, who teaches in their schools, who does that, so you have a lot of other options than just running the, you know the big plot that was the plot of Black Panther or something like that. Question: how do you store host your random tables? I have book resources, but sometimes it's hard to find those tables amidst an action-packed session. Any tips? I have them all in book form. I also use PDFs of them that I can switch from back and forth. And so I usually like books a little bit better. I'm old, right? I'm getting old. So I like books a little bit better, but I'll usually have a whole bunch of PDFs kind of up on tabs and I'll just switch between them. Let me try. I know it's 3. We're going to end right here, but I'm going to, look through, see if I can get a couple. Cobalt Fight Club. It is awesome. That is the encounter table, where it's online. You go on Cobalt Fight Club and you can just type in your party and get it. And somebody got the link in there. It is awesome. Thank you. Trying to get to some of them. I'm sorry. Yeah, a lot of questions. Okay. I think I've gotten through all of them. Well, thank you so much for being here. We are going to have to stop it. We're about a minute over. So thank you so much. Again, if you want to check out dicegeeks.com or some of my other books, thank you so much. Hopefully I was able to answer some questions. Hope you have a good rest of Gen Con. And thank you. Oh, actually, I will drop my email here in the chat if you just want to reach out and say something or ask a question. So there's my email. So, all right. Thank you so much, guys. Have a great Gen Con. And I hope you get play some awesome games soon.